Hey, I think I did it right this time. That's exciting. Hey, I think I did it right this time. Everybody hear me okay? Actually, let me do one more thing. I forgot to feed the dog. I'll be right back. Two videos in one day. Do I have a second one? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to do that interview. That actually got canceled. That's gonna get moved to next week, I think. The one with Mel. So, I guess I'll just jump right into it. So this is an SEC action. It was brought to my attention yesterday by. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. That this guy, Josh Schiffer, who many of you probably know, he posted about this last night, I think. Yeah, this one here. So I just want to give credit where credit's due, right off the top. Hey, Matthew, YP, Factual Lie. I think Kat's here. So that came to my attention, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to show that I actually know stuff about some areas of the law. Not many, but one or two. This used to be my old specialty. I worked at a firm called Allen Matkins in California. It's actually in the same building as Quinn Emanuel, where Spyro works sometimes, but I never actually saw Spyro, unfortunately. Hey, Brooklyn. Thank you. Hey, James. Yeah, I should be working too, but I had a little open time today around this time. Oh yeah, James, I saw your recommendation too for the new topic. I'm gonna try to. I need to look into that before I could do anything with it, but I'm definitely going to. So this case is SEC versus Edwin Brandt Frost IV. With a name like that, I never would have guessed he would have been involved in a Ponzi scheme. And First Liberty Building and Loan LLC. Oh, thanks, James. Yeah, I was really happy with that one, actually. With the stream yesterday. So those are the defendants, and then we have First Liberty Capital Partners LLC, First National Investments LLC, either My Health AI or My Heal Thai Capital LLC, the Legacy Advisory Group Inc., and the Liberty Group LLC. These are what are called relief defendants. I'm going to show you what those are, because this will actually, if you're following YSL, the civil suit, this could actually be useful. So we're going to be doing a lot of paint today. Let's see. We have victims. They're in green for the money. Then we have, let's do a little arrow here. The money goes out to various defendants. And these are the guys that are actually running the scheme themselves. Yeah, I'm going to simplify this. We don't need to have multiple defendants. And then the defendants transfer money out themselves. No blue paint. Got it. Rush. So you have the victims that have the money taken from them. Then you have the actual defendants. In this case, that would be Edward Brant Frost and First Liberty. And then the relief defendants are the people who actually get the money. They get the proceeds of the fraud. This case is Northern District of Georgia, so it's Atlanta area. Let's see up here. So Coinbase is an example I use because we see that one a lot. A shell company or a family, they'll actually get the money, and they will be named as relief defendants because you are trying to get stuff from Let me see. These are the relief defendants because you're trying to get the money back from these entities. Even though they didn't actually do anything wrong, in theory, they still have the money or the assets. So you have to add them as relief defendants so you can claw back the money from them. Matthew, is shell company always code for sketchy things? Not necessarily, but if you see somebody talking about shell companies, there's a good chance that something shady happened. So let's get into it. Plaintiff SEC, they always call themselves the commission, alleges as follows. Between 2014 and June 25, defendants Edward Brant Frost IV and First Liberty Building and Loan raised at least $140 million from approximately 300 investors through the sale of loan participation agreements and promissory notes, which offered annual returns of 8 to 18%. That's a pretty big number. So these investors are going to be the victims. You'll usually see that terminology in Ponzi cases. The investors are the people who give the money, and then oh, I didn't see your link either, James. Oh, hey, Jenny. Okay, so it raised these $140 million. That's a big number. It's not crazy big, but it's a sizable Ponzi for the SEC. They usually don't get involved until you get to like $50, $60 million at least. To defendants represented to investors, again, these are going to be the victims, that their funds would be used to make short-term small business loans at relatively high interest rates. Let me see. They're bridge loans. So I guess I'm going to go back to paint for this. Again, if I'm over-explaining, you can let me know. I just want to make sure that I'm being relatively clear with some of this stuff. So they're giving money to defendants. What is this? Ah, there we go. So this is the plan anyway. Sales pitch. And then the defendants will use that money to make loans. Ah. So that is the idea. And then when the loans are repaid, some of it will go back to the investors. That is the idea. Of course, the defendants will keep some of it. Okay. This is actually a pretty typical Ponzi scheme. I've seen almost this exact, I think this exact pitch, actually, which is probably where they got the idea. So defendants represent to investors that their funds would be used to make short-term small business loans at relatively high interest rates, bridge loans. Defendants represented to investors that these bridge loans and interest thereon would be repaid by borrowers via SBA loans, small business administration loans, or other commercial loans, which defendants claimed they would help broker. So these are short-term loans, and they'll be once the borrowers get a new loan, they'll pay off the first loan. They'll pay off the loan here. I can draw that out if people want, if that would be helpful. I've done this a lot, so I don't want to talk past people or talk too fast or confuse people. Okay. So let's go. Initially, defendants solicited and sold these investments to friends and family in the form of either loan participation agreement or promissory notes. Don't worry about that. They're just trying to get friends and family to loan the money so they can then lend it out to borrowers. Beginning in 2024, defendants started a more widespread public solicitation of potential investors. Okay, Matthew, I can definitely try to explain as fully as I go. Beginning in 2024, defendants started a more widespread public solicitation of potential investors, advertising the opportunity to invest in promissory notes via radio advertising, internet podcasts. I didn't do anything. It's not me. In the First Liberty website. Okay. Yeah, look at that. I can look at that right after this, actually. This is a pretty common thing. Oftentimes with Ponzi schemes, they don't start out as Ponzi schemes. You'll have a business that's legitimate but struggling, and they need to make ends meet, so they take one wrong step, and then it just cascades from there. That's probably the majority of Ponzi schemes, to be honest with you. They're usually not just these out-and-out frauds. All the investments, whether offered as a loan participation agreement or a promissory note, were purportedly to fund bridge loans. Defendants, however, did not use investor funds as represented. While some investor... All right, I gotta make a note about this. Come back to this. My handy dandy stenopad. Okay. While some investor funds were used to make bridge loans, those loans did not perform as represented. Of the bridge loans defendants actually made, only a few have been paid in full. Most bridge loans have ultimately defaulted and ceased making interest payments. So the borrowers aren't paying the money back, and so the bank presumably needs to find a way to repay the original the investors. So this stuff here isn't actually happening. But the defendants need to get the money back to the investors, so they have to raise money somehow. And this being a Ponzi scheme case, I have a guess as to how that's going to happen. Defendants, however, have continued to make interest payments to investors on the defaulted loans. Since at least 2021, defendants have had to use funds raised from new investors to make these interest payments. This is the definition of a Ponzi scheme. In a Ponzi scheme, what you're looking for is funds raised from new investors used to pay old investors. That's really the entirety of what it is. Most, if not all, of the funds raised through the publicly advertising offering were either misappropriated or used to make Ponzi-style payments to existing investors. Yeah. So let's go back to Paint for a second. So now we have, I'm going to delete this to make room. Them over here. These guys. Gave money to... No. gave money to the defendants. And then rather than taking this money and lending it back out like they're supposed to, what they actually did is paid this money back to the original investors. That is the definition of a Ponzi scheme. One interesting thing here is that they're saying since at least 2021, but the business was operating from, I think they said 2015 or 2014. So they probably had some kind of legitimate operations from 2014 to 2021, at least 2021. Mary says, I've seen people do things similar to this, but call it a pyramid scheme. It's not quite the same thing. A pyramid scheme can be a Ponzi scheme. But let me open a new window here. So a pyramid scheme, you have somebody at the top, usually the founder. And then you have like your downlines, they call it usually in MLMs these days. And you have, something like this. Sorry, I couldn't see that. There you go. Then they'll each have their own set of people. I go like this. So you do eventually have like the pyramid. It's the worst pyramid of all time. The general pyramid structure. But you don't necessarily have to have this kind of structure in a Ponzi scheme. Like for instance, in our case, let me pull this up that we're just looking at. It's not really a pyramid scheme exactly because you don't have the same like downline structure for a pyramid scheme. But they're related, and a lot of times in this colloquially, they'll be called the same. They'll be used interchangeably. It's not technically correct, but I don't think anyone's ever going to correct you unless they're dealing with some situation where it's important or relevant to be technically correct. But there can be some overlap, and if you use them interchangeably, I don't think it really matters. So let's go back here. For example, Frost used investor funds to make payments to himself and his family members in excess of $5 million. That's not great. Frost further used investor funds to pay for the operations of affiliated companies that he controlled, First Liberty Capital Partners, First National Investments. I hope that was clear, Mary. If I can try to explain it better, but it's not a huge difference. First National Investments, LLC. That's funny. My biggest Ponzi scheme was actually called American National Investments, LLC. I had to do a double take when I first read that. My Health AI Capital, LLC, the Legacy Advisory Group, Inc., and the Liberty Group, LLC. This is also really common. This is like the most textbook Ponzi scheme case I've ever seen, really. Let me just save this. So usually what you have is you'll have the scammer. I'll call him a scammer. They have one business. That's the Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme named after Charles Ponzi. I should do a video on the origins of the Ponzi scheme, actually. And so they'll get money out of the Ponzi scheme, and then they'll use it to fund other businesses that oftentimes are actually legitimate businesses. And this is just the money going back. Oop, I should have showed you that. So this is what we're looking at there. So it says, Frost further used investor funds on paragraph 16. Let me straighten this out. To pay for the operations of affiliated companies that he controlled. They list the companies. Those are the relief defendants. So when the SEC comes in to regulate, they're going to need to sue these guys. Even though the scammer is over here. So these are called relief defendants. Okay. Let's see. Keep going here. The relief defendants received proceeds from this scheme without providing any value in return and were thus unjustly enriched thereby. That's a little fancy writing for my taste. That just means that they got money they got free money out of the Ponzi scheme. As recently as May 24th, 2025, Frost withdrew $100,000 investor funds for his personal use. In addition to failing to use investor funds as represented to make loans, defendants made other misrepresentations when soliciting new investments. Specifically, Frost knowingly misrepresented the success of the bridge loan program to investors. Frost told some potential investors that First Liberty had only ever had one bridge loan default, so he's lying. He's committing fraud to get the investments, committing fraud in the solicitation of the investments, which you also shouldn't do. Frost told other investors that very few loans had defaulted, and again, most of them did. In reality, a significant portion of the bridge loans were in default when Frost made these statements. So that's bad. By this conduct, defendants have engaged, unless restrained and enjoined by the court, will continue to engage in acts and practices that constitute and will constitute violations of the Securities Act of 1933. Sometimes you'll see that called the 33 Act, the Securities Act. In Section 10B, that's the fraud section of the Exchange Act, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, and Rule 10b-5, which is the fraud statute. Jurisdiction and venue, we don't need to go through that. They have it. Facts. Edwin Brant Frost IV, age 67, lives in Noonan, Georgia. Frost is the owner and president. First Liberty was formed by Frost in 2005 in Georgia, with its principal place of business in Noonan. First Liberty recently ceased operations, had fewer than 10 employees, and claimed to serve Main Street business needs with Wall Street creativity. Technically, that's fair, based on what I've seen so far. Let's see here. By providing loans to customers primarily through the SBA loan program in mortgage brokerage services. They have... No, these are just going to be the relief defendants. I don't think we need to go through these in too much detail. They're just the other companies operated by Frost, and they received investor funds. So this is the investment scheme. Starting in 2014, defendants began raising capital via loan participation agreements. Basically, that means they're asking their friends to give them money to make loans. 2024. I think we read this already. Defendants expanded their capital raise by offering and selling promissory notes to the public. Defendants told investors in both programs that the invested funds were to be used to provide bridge loans. Those are the ones that returned 8 to 18%. In total, defendants raised at least $140 million from the sale of loan participation agreements and promissory notes to at least 300 investors. There are going to be some fairly sizable investors in there. During the friends and family phase, defendants solicited investors to participate. Frost would provide a potential investor with the total loan amount, the anticipated closing date, and the date upon which the loan would mature. Additionally, Frost would provide the potential investor with information about the supposed borrower, the use of funds, the existence of guarantees, and the exit options for the loan. Basically, how they can push the loan off to a new lender. I'm interested to see why they say the supposed borrower. I'm guessing they were fabricating loan agreements based on this language. Investor funds were pooled together to reach the total amount purportedly needed to fund a specific loan. The terms of the note program differed from the friends and family program. There's technicalities. We don't need to get into this. Their website stated the promissory notes allowed First Liberty to provide small businesses with short-term bridge loans and other commercial capital. Let's see. Both the friends and family and publicly advertised investments generally had a 12-month term and paid interest monthly. So here, this is kind of a technical thing. The only reason I'm mentioning it is where it says rollover capability. This is a hook that they use all the time in Ponzi schemes. Basically, say I give a Ponzi scheme $100, and after a year, they say you have $200. Now, you can keep it in a year, we'll give you $400, or you can take it out now. And you say, well, I'll just roll it over, and then in a year, you double it again. And they're not actually doubling your money, but by letting you roll over the money and keep making these paper gains, they don't have to pay you the money. They don't have to pay back any money. So it lets them keep this scheme going for a lot longer. And so rollover capability is something that you'll see a lot in Ponzi schemes. These unfortunate people have any chance of getting their money back? Yeah, they do, actually. I haven't read enough to know whether they will. But I've done a case significantly bigger than this where we actually recovered over 100% of the money. We had to pay our expenses, so it was, I think they got like 75 or 80% back. Because doing this stuff it's extremely expensive, and there's a lot of accounting involved. So that's why the SEC usually won't do it unless there's at least 60, 70, at the absolute minimum, $1 million in issue. But yeah, I think these people have a chance. They might not, but it's possible. The friends and family paid a rate of return between 14 and 18%. The publicly offered notes paid between 8 and 13%. That's not insane. With the interest rate paid increasing based on the size of the investment and tiers starting at $25,000. That's low. Originally, the banks said that they were going to make their money based off of fees, origination fee and other fees, and that the investors were going to get the interest on the loan. 16. I skip over some of the exceedingly technical stuff. Here we go. So this is the bottom line. Largely due to the numerous defaults in the bridge loans, the spread and fees collected from borrowers did not generate enough revenue to pay the interest owed to investors. So the loans were bad. The business was failing, and they needed more money to pay the investors to keep the ship going. And I'm guessing that it probably was legitimate at some point, and then they opened Pandora's box and did it once, and it just snowballed. The Ponzi scheme and misrepresentations. Frost told investors that First Liberty used 100% of the proceeds to fund the bridge loans. That's not true, because he took out $5 million himself. He paid from... Okay, this is interesting. Beginning no later than 2021, First Liberty began operating as a Ponzi scheme. So this is important because the relief defendants that I spoke about earlier, you need to show that they got their money from a Ponzi scheme. And so money that they received before 2021, you're not going to be able to claw back. So this is actually litigated pretty frequently, the start date of the Ponzi scheme. First Liberty experienced a deficit each year from 21 through 25. By the end of 2019, if all outstanding loans were making interest payments, the most that... Okay, so this is all about... They're all arguing about when the Ponzi scheme began. The most that First Liberty could generate in revenue based on the spread and the interest paid was approximately $180,000. In 2019, they incurred $118,000 in expenses. Yeah, they're just showing that the business is losing money and needs to borrow funds to repay the investors. And the borrowed funds were supposed to go to other borrowers. Okay, here we get an example. In August of 2022, a bridge loan borrower with $6.2 million in loans filed for bankruptcy and stopped making payments on its loans. Nevertheless, in December 2022, defendants raised $6.5 million purportedly to make another loan to this borrower. So that $6.5 million was pretty clearly raised in furtherance of the Ponzi scheme. Defendants' potential revenue each year from 2019 to present, calculated using the maximum interest generated, deducting only payroll and credit card expenses. So basically they're showing that the business couldn't operate as a legitimate business and it had to be a fraud. This is a very SEC-style complaint. Very heavy on the details, but technically proficient. As of 2021, approximately 80% of interest and principal payments to investors were sourced from new investor funds. So, as I think Matthew said, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. 80% of what they raised from Peter is going back to Paul. Saying by at least 2021, Frost knew that it was a Ponzi scheme. As recently as May 25, when selling investment, Frost told an investor that when the one bridge loan defaulted, First Liberty paid investors back with its own funds. Again, he's just lying. Hey, Trakisha. So as recently as, what did I say, a couple months ago, he was lying about the nature of the business, or the success of the business. False representations regarding the success of First Liberty's bridge loan program were material to investors when deciding to invest with First Liberty. So this is getting to the fraud requirements. Let's see. In 2019, individual invested $500,000 in connection with a $3.4 million bridge loan to the bridge loan borrower who filed bankruptcy in August of 22. That loan closed in October of 2019 and was to mature in 21. Okay, we already talked about this. Subsequently, First Liberty made a second loan to the same borrower in November of 19 for $900,000. May 21, the first loan matured, but the investor was not repaid. First Liberty made a third loan to the same borrower for $1.5 million. A fourth loan for $400,000. And in August of 22, that borrower filed for bankruptcy. In December of 22, after bankruptcy, First Liberty made a fifth loan for $6.5 million to that same entity. So, I'm guessing they're lying and they weren't actually funding these loans and they were just using it for the fraud, but we'll see to that. May 24, Frost lists the investor for a new investment. Frost offered the investor the opportunity to participate with other investors in a loan that would be used to help fund a company that was developing a healthcare app. In response, the investor inquired about the status of repayment of the $500,000 investment, and Frost told the investor the first loan was scheduled to pay off in June and that he was very confident that it will, even though the company was already in bankruptcy and he was never going to get that money. Frost told the investor the borrower was up 20%. He was making a lot more money, 20% more profits, and our lending partner is very eager to get this done. So these are all lies. He's just lying to the investor. Relying on those representations, the investor made another $200,000 investment in the Ponzi scheme. So that's just clear-cut fraud. He lied to the investor, and he got the money out of him. That's basically how fraud works. And Frost knew at that point the borrower was in bankruptcy, so it was all a lie. Let's skip that part. The SEC is very thorough. Hey, Trakisha. I don't remember if I said that already. But here they're going to say that, again, for I think the third time, that the defendants, Frost, did not tell the investors that they were just losing money hand over fist and that the borrowers weren't repaying the money. Okay, here we get to hopefully some of the Maine. That's from. That's upsetting. Okay. During defendant's scheme, Frost misappropriated a significant amount of investor assets. Between 2019 and 2024, Frost spent over $230,000 in investor funds to rent a vacation home for his family in Kennebunkport, Maine. Maine had nothing to do with this. I want to be clear. Kennebunkport is where a lot of very wealthy families have vacation homes. The Bush family, like the George Bush family, has a compound there. What was his name? The Prime Minister of France had property there. It's a pretty affluent area. Between 2019 and 2025, Frost used over $140,000 in investor funds to purchase jewelry. Additionally, he used $20,800 to purchase a Patek Philippe. A little gauche, but okay. Between 22 and 24, Frost paid over $335,000 in investor funds to a rare coin dealer. Let me make a note of that real quick. This isn't that fun yet. Oh, hey, Mom. I'm from South Portland. Frost used investor funds to make over $2.4 million in payments to credit cards issued to him and his business entities. $570,000 in political donations, and over $5 million to himself and members of his family. Given that First Liberty is operating a loss, Frost was not entitled to these funds, according to what he told investors as to how he would be compensated. Defendants also directed investor funds to various entities related to First Liberty, specifically, hey, Vanessa. Let's see. They directed over 630 to, they're going to go through the various relief defendants, to FLCP, 1.1 to First National, 460,000 to My Health AI, about 200,000 to the Legacy Advisory Group, 8.3 million to the Liberty Group LLC. In the last 8 months, Frost has been dissipating assets at a rapid pace. He might end up in prison. From October 24 to 25, he wrote checks for company accounts to himself totaling $1.3 million. 9 days after being interviewed by commission staff, Frost withdrew $100,000 from company accounts containing investor funds. If you ever find yourself in this situation where you've just been interviewed by the SEC about running a Ponzi scheme, don't take money out of the company. They know. They already know. You're only going to make it worse for yourself. Oh, goodness. Very recently, Frost also has been making large purchases of companies that sell high value and easily concealable assets. Between December and May, Frost wrote checks to a local jeweler totaling $40,570. In November and December, he wrote checks from company accounts totaling $210,000 to a business that specializes in selling gold coins. I didn't know they had those businesses anymore. But, okay. They're just going to state that 17A1 of the 33 Act or the Securities Act. I think that's just fraud. Yeah, the Section 17 of the 33 Act is fraud, and then they'll do 10B5 of the Exchange Act, I'm assuming. Yeah, this is just a fraud claim. Yeah, here you go. 10B5 of the Exchange Act. That's just fraud, basically. They employed devices of fraud, made untrue statements, and they said deceive the purchasers of the securities. So, prayer for relief. This is what the SEC is asking for. Permanent injunctions and joint defendants and the people. Oh, yeah. Like and subscribe and share this video. Permanent injunctions joining the defendants from breaking the rules. A permanent injunction enjoining defendant Frost from directly or indirectly participating in the issuance of any securities, provided that such injunction will not prevent defendant Frost from selling his own stuff. So basically, you're out. You can't do security stuff anymore. You can't sell stocks or loans. You're out of the game. 3, an order requiring an accounting by defendants, relief defendants of the use of proceeds of the fraudulent conduct described in this complaint, and the disgorgement of defendants of all ill-gotten gains or unjust enrichment with prejudgment interest to effect the remedial purposes of the federal security laws. You got to give the stuff back. Those gold coins, the Patek Philippe, the jewelry. What am I forgetting? Probably the house in Kennebunkport. You got to sell it all, and you got to either give it back or sell it all and give the money back. Civil penalties. This is an asset freeze. An order appointing a receiver. This is who I would have represented back in my previous life 6 months ago. Over defendant First Liberty. I'll explain that in detail after. Over defendant First Liberty and relief defendants. In order preventing the defendants from destroying documents, you can't go Enron and just shred everything. And whatever else the court thinks is appropriate. Yeah, the SEC has, their enforcement division has really good lawyers. It's extremely competitive to get in there. So, that's not great for them. They're in trouble. I don't know if it's usually the SEC doesn't do criminal investigations. They can't bring criminal cases. So in a lot of cases, you'll see the FBI and the SEC do a joint investigation. Let me see if that's the case here. Let's go First Liberty. I couldn't remember the name. I just said it like 8,000 times. Let's see. I'm just going to pull up the... I grew up in Winterport, 25 minutes from Bangor. Nice. Which one is this? SEC.gov. That's fine. Nope. Yeah, let's do it this way. Let's see if there is any... Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any criminal stuff yet. That's not surprising, though. Sometimes the FBI takes longer. Yeah, looks like there's no criminal news. At Matt asks, SEC. Yeah, that's right. Securities and Exchange Commission. They do all stocks and bonds, any kind of investment. There are a few narrow things that they can't do, but they do all the crypto regulation too, which can be fun. I typed that really well. This is one that I did. This is an investor that my firm represented. Well, let me see if I can find a case that's fun. This one. Let's look at this one. Here we go. Let's see here. This was a case that I was on at the start. It's still ongoing. I'm not there anymore because I'm here. But this is one of the earlier Ponzi scheme cases I've been involved with. Let's take a look at the complaint. And we'll look at this too. This was written after I was gone. All right, here we go. These are my guys. There we go. That's better. So this is another SEC case. Securities and Exchange Commission versus Integrated National Resources, INR. This is my old office. Please don't stalk Matt or Zara. Ted Fates. No inside information, just going to see what they've been up to. A quick summary for you. In its complaint, the commission alleges that from June 2019 to April 2023, the two defendants raised approximately $60 million, including over $22 million in 2023. The complaint alleges that defendants lied about the existence of revenue from and permits associated with grow facilities that supposedly cultivated cannabis in Adelanto, California, and Las Vegas, Nevada. The complaint further alleges that defendant fraudulently used investor funds to enrich themselves rather than to fund their purported business. To date, no evidence of such cannabis business operations has been found, and defendant Williams has admitted there were none. So there wasn't even a grow facility in question. They just raised $60 million based on these things. This is going to be a fun one, I promise. They're talking about the receivers investigation. The receiver is an independent third party that comes in and basically takes over the businesses and tries to recover the assets. And that's who I represented. I actually wrote these kinds of reports a lot. Let's see. So the receiver has recovered to date over $8 million in cash, 14 mostly exotic and luxury vehicles, 6 real properties, that means houses or land, various pieces of jewelry and artwork. I know there's a particularly funny one in here. Let's look at the real properties. I actually don't know what they've recovered. Are you missing this sort of work? A little bit. It's fun. It's also it's incredibly it can be incredibly dry. Like on this case, I spent so much time going through financial records, just 10, 12-hour days of just going through Excel spreadsheets of financial records, like cell phone records, stuff that they didn't do in YSL. Let me see. There's one particular thing that they found. Here we go. This is my favorite footnote that I've seen them written. So this is one of the things that they bought with the stolen funds. The pieces were over 6-foot tall metal statues of Egyptian gods Horus and Anubis, a medieval knight, and a full-size replica of an Italian sports car. And they had this in a storage locker, I believe. Yeah, this was in the Boise, Idaho area. And they had it next to the other classic cars that he had bought with the funds. There were a couple guys. There were another couple guys, and they'd go buy Harley Davidsons together every couple weekends. Those kinds of cases that are less complex, less sophisticated, you have a tougher time of getting the money back, just because they just light it on fire. But yeah, in this case, the fraudsters were taking people on tours of a grow facility that they didn't own and saying they did. And that is how they would raise funds. They were just taking people to random marijuana grow facilities and be like, yeah, this is my place. And that's how they raised $60 million. I'm going to show you the defendant now, because I'm a big fan of his. Why are you not working? Here we go. This was the lead defendant in the case. Patrick Earl Williams, aka Big Rig Baby. He originally drove a big rig. He was a truck driver before this happened. And he I don't know how it happened exactly, but somehow he got into this scheme, and he ran afoul of the SEC. This was my desktop background at my old job for quite a while, because I felt that. He has the big rig chain right here. This Big Rig Baby. Also another classic album cover. I've never done this before, but I've never seen this video. This was some of his music videos maybe have been funded with Ponzi schemes. Mary W., not what I was thinking, expecting more suit and tie. Yeah, I mean, there were people involved in this that were more sophisticated. But I don't know, he's just a likable guy, and he was kind of the face of it, I guess. But he's definitely a charismatic guy. So let's watch it. I've watched this probably 900 times. Hit the slab. I've watched this at least I asked the receiver if I could bid on that chain when she auctioned it, and she said no. I still want it, though. I don't know when the music starts, but it does eventually.
You get that bitch fixed before you make a Alright, bro. Let me know when it's done. I'm gonna like, you got something there, bro? Look.
I love it.
What's up?
God shooting for me.
Big rig, baby.
Turn me up,
They don't play fair. Watch your family and your friends and the ones that you keep close. They cross you out for a couple bucks. The friend of me stay polite cause you know they see you.
That's a good point, Trakisha. I'd hate to have to cross somebody out for a couple bucks.
Better keep that pole, which is a shame. A nigga cross you out in the same lane. Cross you out, nigga. Better keep that pole, which is a shame. A nigga cross you out in the same lane. Cross you out, nigga. Won't catch me slipping like a...
Actually, you know what? The receiver probably owns the rights to this, so I could just call her.
Transmission. I'm getting money, but this rap shit ain't a mission. 7 screens of income since a young nigga. For my daddy passed, he told me you better have fun, nigga. That's why I pull up the song these niggas wish for. Thinking about that 9 to 5 money, but we...
Okay, I'll stop playing it. I don't think he's on a label, to be honest with you, so we'll see. I think I'll be okay. But, yeah, he was one of the defendants. There's another guy, the one who lives in Idaho. He, with the money... So he's a big car guy. He actually knocked out a wall in his house so that he could look into his garage and see his cars while he sat inside of his house. I've thought about that a lot. But that's where the money went in this case. In cases like that, it's a lot harder to get money back than like in the last case where you have, you know, money going into real property like houses, or I guess gold coins might be hard to get back. But you're not getting this money back. You said wall. Correct. So another case, this would be the same not investors. This would be the same receiver, Krista Freitag, who I think is probably the best receiver in the country right now. She's incredibly sophisticated. This was, actually, maybe I'm going to find something on here.
Over nearly 2 decades, Gina Champion Cain made a name for herself as one of San Diego's most successful entrepreneurs. She was considered a top real estate developer, owned a portfolio of restaurants, and a variety of other businesses. Today, Champion Cain sits in a federal prison in Northern California, serving a 15-year sentence for orchestrating the biggest Ponzi scheme in San Diego history.
Nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury? I do.
She had to think about that for too long.
The San Diego Union Tribune has been following the story since 2019, when the Securities and Exchange Commission first accused Champion Cain of committing fraud.
It ended up being about double that amount of money.
Since then, much more has been revealed about the scheme, and the lengths she went to steal hundreds of...
No, we need to go back a few seconds. I went through every single one of these emails. I had to read all of them. I told them never to call and bother you ladies, she wrote to an escrow agent. If they call asking about escrow agreements, blah, 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 say, sure, whatever, show me the money. YP says, I like how these cars go to Treasury for their auctions. Yeah. Oh, actually, the receiver sells these usually, not Treasury. But yeah.
And the lengths she went to steal hundreds of millions of dollars from unsuspecting investors.
They suspected a little bit.
When Champion Cain got into the restaurant business in 2012, she learned a lot about how the industry worked and how expensive it could be for businesses to get their liquor licenses. Seeing this as an opportunity to make money for herself and investors, Champion Kane pitched a unique idea: provide high-interest loans to would-be restaurateurs.
Does that sound familiar to the first complaint we read?
Who were applying to the state for their licenses. In the beginning, Champion Kane reached out to some of her closest friends and asked if they wanted to participate.
Yeah, it's also just like the first complaint we read.
Eventually, that small circle widened to encompass hundreds of investors and several investment funds. The plan worked like this. Investors would deposit funds with one of her companies, A&I Development. She reassured them that their money would be safely held in separate escrow accounts with Chicago Title, one of the nation's leading title insurance companies.
Chicago Title is one of the largest financial institutions in the world.
The pitch was she would then use those funds to show the State Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control that the applicant had the financial resources to purchase a license. Once an applicant's liquor license was approved, investors were supposed to get their money back via Chicago Title, plus a share of the high interest rates she was charging. This was the process Gina promised her investors. But in reality, the system worked very differently. After investors would deposit their funds into the escrow account with Chicago Title, the money never went to any liquor license applicants. There weren't any. Instead, Champion Kane, unknown to the investors, had unrestricted access to all the funds. She used the money to pay back earlier investors, prop up her company's struggling businesses, and fund her sometimes luxurious lifestyle. Champion Kane was able to keep the fraud going for nearly 8 years. Part of why she was successful in recruiting investors was because she partnered with Chicago Title, which had a trusted reputation. Another reason was Champion Kane's own reputation in town. After nearly a quarter century in the upper echelons of San Diego business, Champion Kane's work as a restaurateur and real estate developer are now viewed more skeptically. For it now appears her biggest success was the nearly decade-long $400 million Ponzi scheme that sent her to prison.
And the ironic thing is I was actually a victim of a Ponzi scheme, so I know Ponzi schemes never work.
Yeah, that's where the idea came from, isn't it?
Yeah, they never work.
Yeah,
Ponzi schemes never work.
She's not wrong. I mean, about some stuff. But Ponzi schemes are, just by definition, they can't work in the long run. You always need more money to pay back investors than you bring in. That's just the nature of them. Oh, there were a bunch of pseudonyms in this case. Let me see. Sold a Maserati, a couple of houses, covered about $15 million so far. So, about what, 25%? Not ideal, but there's still more money coming in. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to call it a day. I just want to do a quick review of Ponzi schemes in general, because, I don't know, I want to show people that actually know something about some stuff. But if anybody has any questions, I can definitely answer them. A little bit of a trip down memory lane for me, as much as anything else. Especially with seeing some of my colleagues were up to. This guy, he had the office right next to me. He's one of the smartest people that I've ever met. Dave Czar is, he's the head of the practice group. He's very successful, very bright. And then Ted's down in San Diego. He's a really nice guy. Yeah, of course, Mary. I'm happy to. That's what I like doing. I like teaching and sharing stuff and explaining stuff. A lot of times I think that legal stuff isn't as complicated I mean, I think this stuff is complicated, but a lot of times it's just kind of obscured by like technical language, and it's made to sound more complicated than it actually is. And I think the law has gotten better at that over the last 20 or 30 years, but there's still a long way to go. And stuff that isn't complicated is made to sound complicated. And it's kind of, intimidating to approach because of the vocabulary that they use. This stuff is actually complicated, but I think a lot of like the criminal cases, things could be a lot more clearly explained. I think Georgia is actually particularly behind in using more modern language. But yeah, there's a long way to go. I like sharing this stuff. I like talking about it. I like answering questions. But yeah, Mir, it was my pleasure. So I think I'm going to do a couple videos later. I don't want to do them live because I need to do like research and have them open and cut back and forth and stuff. But I'll definitely have some video tomorrow and probably each day this weekend. Probably a lot of it will be from the stream yesterday. But yeah, thanks to everybody for watching. And I was going to do an interview tonight, but that's going to be rescheduled, so I'll be doing that soon. But I'll keep you guys updated on that. So, yeah. Hope everyone has a good weekend, and I'll see you next time.